A very good afternoon and welcome to SA Today, the final hour. Joining us now is SABC News Political Editor Mzwandile Mbeje, who's got breaking news for us in regards to, of course, the announcement of the cabinet by President Cyril Ramaphosa later on today. Mzwandile, you came in with breaking news, so please break the story to us.
Well, as South Africans have been waiting for when the President of the Republic will announce his executive, so we now have confirmation that at 9 o'clock this evening, the President of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa, will announce his new executive. That executive will obviously include other members of the other parties because this will be a government of national unity. It has taken a bit of time because a number of talks and agreements had to be reached. But of course, I think this is where we are now. So we know that the sticking issue around the discussions with the DA were resolved. And then once that was done, and the other parties that are part of the government of national unity, remember, it's 10 of them, so had somehow agreed. It was just these two big parties where certain issues were not resolved, particularly in the allocation of positions. But now we have confirmation that it's now sorted, it's resolved. So that is why at 9 o'clock in Pretoria, the citadel of power, the President of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa, will announce his new executive.
Very interesting turn of events, Mzwandile, because a lot of people were starting to get scared in terms of the delays and what could this potentially lead to in terms of service delivery as well as the smooth running of the country. So reaction to these news will widely be welcomed by most.
Certainly, because upon the inauguration of President Ramaphosa, the previous government then dissolved.
Yes.
So which basically meant, so currently, since the president was inaugurated, between then and now, we have had no minister. So the president carried all the executive authority. So clearly there are issues that need to be attended to as a country. So it was very important for him to be able to then announce his cabinet so that he's able to allocate. Remember, he's got the powers, those ministries that he will allocate, he also assigns the powers to those ministries. So that is what is going to be happening.
And that's just what I wanted to ask, Mzwandile, that since you mentioned that whatever outstanding issues were left between the DA as well as the ANC pertaining to the appointment of the cabinet members, we all know, I mean, the biggest question was, will the president announce his cabinet without, of course, suffering duress or pressure from other political parties when he actually does announce his cabinet? So how sure are we that he was in a clear mind, he took this decision as his prerogative enshrined in the Constitution, that it's his sole discretion to appoint certain members?
Remember, Alicia, I mean, they have been involved in a number of discussions. I think after the election results, which basically said no party is winning
outright.
So the ANC, which won the majority of the votes, despite not reaching the 50+1, had about 3 options on the table, but it decided to go for the third one. I mean, it had an option of going with a grand coalition where it could have just gone to a party and then they formed coalition. It also had the option of forming a minority government, but out of these options, it then chose the third option, the government of national unity. It basically said, I mean, the statement of the NEC when they resolved in that discussion, they said, we acknowledge that no party was given an outright majority. So we take this as a clarion call by South Africans that all of you must work together. Then it created a platform where it invited everyone to say, let's put our heads together, let's form a government of national unity. Because South Africans said, so none of you shall run this country alone, so let's get together. But of course, there were those parties who were not comfortable in serving in the government of national unity if there were others. For example, DA was uncomfortable with the EFF and the vice versa. So but the ANC, which was leading this process, basically had said, so everyone was welcome. So we have come to this now, and you had, I think, as recently as I think the day before yesterday, where the EFF had a meeting with the ANC. Even the EFF had said they are willing to be part of the government of national unity, but on condition that the DA and the Freedom Front Plus are not part of it. But I think at the time that meeting had happened, I think the processes were almost concluded with the DA. So here we are now. So we will then hear this evening what exactly the president will unveil. And we are not only expecting, by the way, Alicia, the DA and the ANC cabinet ministers. Remember, there's also IFP, there's also Patriotic Alliance, and a number of other smaller parties which have joined this government of national unity. And it's not only going to be reflected in the executive. By the executive, we mean the cabinet ministers and the deputies. It will also be reflected in the legislature. So you can see, you are likely to see some of those parties perhaps chairing committees in Parliament, because that is part of engaging everyone, taking everyone on board to show that this indeed is a government that is inclusive. But of course, not lost to us is that there are those parties which don't see this as a government of national unity.
Very interesting point that, Mzwai, because on the issue of the EFF, so are we still, supposed to expect a decision from the ANC as to whether or not they accept the proposal of the EFF, or the EFF will now have to revise, since of course there's an agreement in place, and it is just those 10 members that you are saying now this makes the final makeup of the GNU?
The fact that the president is ready to announce, basically that proposal is...
it falls away.
It falls away.
Okay, so it's a closed and shut down process. National Government of Unity is in full swing. It is working for the country. We're going to hear about the different portfolios at 9 p.m. this evening. Absolutely.
The president will indeed indicate what exactly is happening. And also, because they, the ANC in this instance, had wanted really everyone to be on board, I can hear them say they are willing and ready to engage with even those who are outside of government, because I think there's a recognition that South Africans did not vote anyone outright, so you've got to respect that.
So what's the process that's going to unfold after this, Mzwandile? Because we still know that the Gauteng legislature has not been installed in terms of its members.
The Gauteng issue was directly linked to what
is happening at national level, yes.
So you are likely to also see something perhaps tomorrow, I don't know, but it means the Mpanyazali Sophie, the Premier of Gauteng, will be able to also announce his own executive council now, because we are pretty much sorted. But of course, as the process goes forward, we then expect the swearing-in ceremony of the ministers and the deputy ministers.
And then opening of Parliament on the 18th.
On the 18th. So you've got to hit the ground running. So there's been a bit of time lost, but we understand that in modern democracies, actually the time that was spent is actually very little. I remember in 2010, we traveled to Belgium with the former president, Jacob Zuma then. The government there had not formed after 6 months of elections because of these kinds of negotiations. That we're able to do it in a relatively short space of time does tell you that at least we are able to perhaps move forward. So it's a difficult process, but I guess it needs to be done. Now, beyond this, South Africans expect nothing but service delivery. Absolutely, and I suppose that's going to be the top of the agenda as to how this government of national unity actually governs, of course, taking into account the wishes of the people and also reflecting in terms of how they voted. Anything else you want to tell us? There, you come with a bag of surprises this afternoon, Mzwai. Well, wait for 9 o'clock, and then let's hear the president. Is the 10 of the president now, and I think everyone will want to know what exactly. I'm not even going to ask you if you've peeked at the list, if you've seen anything. We'll leave it to the president. Mzwai, thank you so much for that comprehensive report. The SABC News political editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, with breaking news. As we understand, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be announcing his members of cabinet at 9 p.m. this evening. I'm sure you can catch all of that right here on SABC News.